So what are we focusing on today based on that report?
Two main things. First, a really significant travel ban affecting quite a few countries. And second, something much more targeted, an action aimed specifically at international students looking to go to Harvard.
Okay. So our mission here is really to break down what this CNN report tells us, get right to the core insights.
Yeah, like what do these proclamations actually say? How do they compare to, past actions?
Right. Well, what's the official justification? What are the counter arguments? And maybe most importantly, what does it mean in the real world?
We want to distill it all down, get you the essential info quickly from this complex source material.
Very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
Got it. So let's start with that first one, the travel ban. The report frames this as a sort of reintroduction, but maybe expanded.
Exactly. It's bringing back a policy that was pretty controversial during the president's first term.
And the scope seems quite wide this time. The report says it outright bans travel from 12 specific countries.
Yeah, the list is, let's see, Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen.
Wow. Okay. And the report also mentioned partial restrictions on some others.
That's right, 7 other countries, though the source material we have doesn't actually list those 7.
And timing. Is it immediate? I remember last time was quite chaotic.
No, and that's a key difference highlighted in the report. It takes effect at midnight, but 5 days after the signing, so June 9th, not the immediate airport scramble we saw back in 2017.
Okay, so they learned something from that rollout. And this comparison to the first ban is important, you said.
Definitely. The CNN report is clear it's not identical to the one that went through all those court battles.
So what are the similarities and differences the report points out?
Well, some countries are repeats from the version the Supreme Court eventually okayed. Think Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Chad, Iran. They were on that list, and they're on this one.
But Afghanistan wasn't on that one, right?
Yeah.
You listed it this time.
Correct. Afghanistan's inclusion is a major difference, and the report also notes, just for context on the first ban, countries like Cuba and Venezuela were involved in those earlier discussions or versions, but they're not on this current list of 12.
Interesting. Okay, so what's the administration's reasoning this time? Is it the same as before?
Pretty much. The proclamation itself, according to the report, argues it's about national security and vetting. Basically, these countries don't provide enough screening info, making it impossible for the U.S. to properly vet visa applicants. Same core argument.
The way they've done it this time.
Yeah.
The CNN analysis says the approach is different.
Yeah. Much more skillful is the phrase used in the report. It apparently followed a formal review by State and Homeland Security.
More deliberate then.
Seems like it. And the strategy looks designed to give the president the strongest possible legal footing, arguing it's within his executive power because other countries are failing in their systems.
So framing it as a response to external failures, not just an internal decision.
Exactly. But, the report does point out something interesting.
What's that?
There's no clear benchmark mention, like what does a country need to do to get off the list? The report describes it as kind of a we'll know it when we see it approach from the administration.
Okay. Vague. So what about the legal side? The CNN report included an analysis from a former federal prosecutor. What was their take?
They raised some serious questions, specifically about the factual predicate, the evidence used to justify the ban legally.
Factual predicate, meaning the actual reasons given in the document.
Right. And the critique in the report gets pretty specific. Like, it mentions the proclamation references the suspect in that awful Boulder shooting.
Yeah.
But the report points out that suspect's home country isn't actually on the ban list, which, kind of undercuts the example.
Huh. It seems odd.
What else?
The analysis also questions using visa overstays as a reason. The argument presented is that overstays are really more about U.S. enforcement, not a failure by the other country's initial screening. So maybe a weak justification for a total ban.
So the takeaway from that legal analysis is that the ban feels maybe overbroad, not targeted enough.
That's a sense from the report, yeah. And this is a big...
But the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The report really emphasizes that the Supreme Court, back in the first term, upheld a version of the ban.
And that ruling gave the president a lot of power in this area.
A lot. The report uses terms like broad discretion and even raw legal power to limit entry for non-citizens, especially when national security is invoked. The court basically said the executive branch has wide latitude here. So even if critics think the reasons are weak this time, the power might still be there.
That seems to be the concern highlighted in the report.
But
It predicts legal challenges, for sure. They'll definitely happen. But the prediction is also that the Supreme Court might just uphold it again, maybe even quickly, on an emergency docket, relying on that previous precedent.
wow. Okay. So a potentially strong legal shield despite questions about the justification. Let's circle back to the rollout, though. You said it was smoother this time.
Yeah, totally different vibe compared to 2017. No reports and people stranded at airports this time. The CNN piece explicitly says the administration learned their lessons.
How so? What did they do differently, according to the report?
It's described as carefully crafted. Apparently, there were actual deliberations involving people from Homeland Security, DHS, and the West Wing. Seems like a more thought-out process, rolled out later in the term, not right at the start.
Okay, that makes sense. And looking forward, does the proclamation lock these countries in permanently? Or is there flexibility?
The report says the language leaves room to add or remove countries later on.
And why might they do that?
Well, the source connects this flexibility to other administration goals, like maybe using the ban as leverage.
Leverage for what?
Things like pressuring countries to accept deportees from the U.S., or maybe striking deals about migrants. The report mentions trying to work with South Africa on similar issues in the past, so the list could change based on negotiations or other priorities.
Got it. So the travel ban is one big piece. Ban 2.0 maybe? But there was that second proclamation you mentioned, the one targeting Harvard.
That's right. Totally separate action, much narrower focus. This one suspends visas, but only for new international students planning to attend Harvard University.
Just Harvard. Why?
Well, the CNN report frames it as the president possibly trying to follow through on an earlier pledge or threat he made against Harvard specifically.
And the impact. International students are a big deal for universities like Harvard, right?
Huge. The report notes they're a significant chunk of the student body there and at other top universities. It even includes a perspective on how valuable they are in the classroom, bringing diverse views, especially in, national security classes.
So what's the legal basis cited for this one? Is it also national security?
Apparently, yes. According to the report, that's the justification being used. The analysis suggests it might be an attempt to find a different legal angle after a court blocked a previous broader effort targeting international students more generally.
But the report suggests the real motivation might be different.
Yeah, the analysis presented in the CNN report leans that way. The former prosecutor suggests it might be less about genuine security risks posed by Harvard students and more about potentially punishing the university for opposing the president on other things, a sort of vendetta, as the source puts it.
Okay. So legally speaking, how does this Harvard-specific ban look?
Not good. According to the legal analysis in the report, it's described as likely to fail in court.
What is that?
The reasoning seems pretty simple. There's just no clear basis given for picking only Harvard. Why them and not other universities?
Right. It seems arbitrary unless there's specific evidence.
Exactly. And the report contrasts this with what would be legally sound targeting specific students if you had actual evidence linking them to terrorism or crime. But the source says no such specific evidence has been offered for this blanket ban on all new international students at Harvard.
So the courts might look closely at the justification or lack thereof.
Yeah, the analysis suggests courts will likely demand a solid factual basis, and without one, they might see it, again, as that vendetta the source mentioned, not a legitimate security measure.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together then. We have these two big but distinct actions from the White House.
Right. One's a broad travel ban hitting over a dozen countries, justified by, vetting concerns and national security.
And the other is super specific, just new international students at Harvard. Also citing national security, but facing questions about political motivations based on the CNN report's analysis.
And these matter, right. They affect real people's plans to travel to study here.
Definitely. And they raise those fundamental questions about presidential power, especially in immigration, and how national security gets invoked.
Plus, as the report lays out, we're looking at almost certain legal fights. It really highlights that tension between the administration saying this is why we're doing it, and the legal challenges saying, hold on, where's the proof? What's the real reason?
It's a real-time example of policy being made, justified, and then immediately challenged. A snapshot of executive action and legal pushback.
So thinking about that tension, the CNN report highlights The Supreme Court granting the president broad discretion on one hand, but these new actions raising questions about their specific factual basis and maybe motivations on the other.
Yeah.
What does the legal scrutiny that's expected for these proclamations really tell us about the checks and balances? Especially when national security or vetting failures are the arguments used. It makes you think about that balance, right, between the president's authority to act and the need for, well, a clear defensible reason when the impact is this big.